Good morning. Yeah. Okay, the time is now 10 a.m. There's an echo. And I will call the meeting of the District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability to order. I'm Bega Chairperson Norma Hutcheson, and this meeting is being held at the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, 1030 15th Street Northwest, Suite 700 West, and virtually. Joining me today for this meeting are board members Charles Nottingham, Felice Smith, Darrin Sobin, and Melissa Tucker. Together, the five of us constitute a quorum for this meeting. Since it was first posted, there have been no changes to the agenda. So I ask the board members to please take a minute to review the agenda, and then we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda for today's meeting. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the board has adopted the agenda for today's meeting. Also before us are the minutes from the draft meeting minutes from the August 2025 meeting. Will a member please make a motion that we consider approval of the meeting minutes?
I'll offer the motion to approve the August meeting minute.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board consider the approval of the August 2025 meeting minutes. If there are no comments or questions, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Hearing none, the board approves the August 2025 meeting minutes. Next on the agenda is a report from the Office of Open Government. Director Allen, please proceed.
Thank you and good morning, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board. I am Niquelle Allen, Director of Open Government. I am pleased to present this report on the activities of the Office of Open Government, or OOG. Our mission is to ensure that all persons receive full and complete information concerning the affairs of the District of Columbia government and the actions of its officials. Since the last board meeting, OOG has continued its work to ensure that the District of Columbia government's operations are transparent, open to the public, and promote civic engagement. To that end, OOG has enforced the Open Meetings Act, advised on the Freedom of Information Act's requirements, and provided training on those transparency laws. OOG has proudly served as advocates for an open and transparent government. I will begin with OMA and FOIA advice provided by the office since the last board meeting. We've issued 2 advisory opinions on the Open Meetings Act. The first is a dismissal of an OMA complaint, Council of the District of Columbia, OOG-2025-0054. I recuse myself from this matter due to an appearance of a conflict of interest pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.23A, and assigned it to the Chief Counsel to review and issue a determination on my behalf. On August 7th, 2025, Chief Counsel Neal dismissed complaint number OOG-2025-0054 against the Council of the District of Columbia, which alleged that the council violated the Open Meetings Act because Chairman Phil Mendelson and certain members of the council discussed public business with leadership of the Washington Commanders football team at a dinner meeting and failed to properly notice the meeting in accordance with the OMA. Chief Counsel Neal found that the Director of Open Government is precluded from bringing a lawsuit to enforce the OMA regarding council meetings pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-579A, and that the council's gathering on that day in issue falls outside of the scope of the Open Meetings Act definition of a meeting as it pertains to the council. The Chief Counsel explained that the Council of the District of Columbia prescribes its own rules regarding how it enforces the Open Meetings Act. However, he noted that this does not preclude a private right of action in DC Superior Court pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-207.42. Chief Counsel Neal cited OOG's advisory opinion, OOG-2024-0007 of February 12, 2025, in which I addressed these issues in greater detail. Furthermore, he explained that the Open Meetings Clarification Temporary Amendment Act of 2025 amended the OMA and clarifies the definition of a meeting. In relevant part, the amended statute states that for the purposes of the Council of the District of Columbia, the term meeting means a regular or additional legislative meeting and committee meeting where votes are taken. The Chief Counsel took notice in his dismissal of the complaint that the legislation was in effect at the time of the June 30th, 2025 dinner, and that was the subject of the complaint. A copy of the dismissal letter and the complaint are in Dropbox. The second advisory opinion was an OMA advisory opinion concerning the Board of Trustees for Hope Community Public Charter School, number OOG-2025-0024. On August 18th, I issued this advisory opinion in response to a complaint which alleged that the Hope Community Public Charter School Board had not published dates for future meetings. The Hope Community Public Charter School Board relinquished its charter at the end of the school year of 2024-2025 and is not in operation. So the allegation in the complaint is moot. I decided to address the matter and issue the advisory opinion for the benefit of the stakeholders of active boards of trustees for public charter schools, and should this charter resume operation under a new charter agreement. The board violated the OMA by failing to publish a schedule of its meetings for the school year 2024 through 2025 on the school's website. A Google document provided by the board in response to the complaint that was accessible via a link and contained a schedule did not fulfill the requirements of the Open Meetings Act to publish an annual schedule of its meetings because the link was not published on the school's website. A copy of the advisory opinion and complaint are in Dropbox. Next is informal advice rendered by the office. Since the last board meeting, OOG has responded informally via email, telephone, or teleconference to requests for assistance as follows: 7 requests for Open Meetings Act advice, 6 requests for FOIA advice, and 12 requests for assistance with open-dc.gov. Meeting monitoring is next. OOG staff attends public bodies meetings in person and remotely to ensure compliance with the Open Meetings Act. They also inspect public bodies websites and OOG's central meeting calendar for public meeting notices and records. OOG's attorneys provide legal advice on OMA compliance and take corrective action if necessary. Since the last board meeting, OOG's legal staff have attended 10 public body meetings. As a result of the monitoring, 1 corrective measure was communicated. The public body failed to publish a complete meeting notice, which should have included a location of the meeting, valid web link and login information or dial-in number and access code pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. Next in my report is our training and outreach activities. DC FOIA Advisory Opinion Review Training to DC FOIA officers. On August 6th, Chief Counsel Neal presented this training to DC FOIA officers. It was the 4th session in OOG's DC FOIA training for FOIA officers, our webinar series. The training covered OOG's latest advisory opinions on DC FOIA, and it included the following topics: FOIA search terms, system requirements, FOIA appeals, and timing for fulfilling requests. I, along with OOG staff, attended the training virtually. Next, preparing a civil case and dispensive litigation training. On August 13th, OOG hosted this seminar as part of its FOIA Officer webinar training series. The training session was facilitated by Adam Daniel and Brendan Heath, Assistant Attorneys General of the Civil Litigation Division, Office of the Attorney General for the District of Columbia. I moderated the question and answer segment, and OOG staff attended this training virtually. Publication of OOG's newsletter, Open Govist, issue number 10. On August 15th, OOG published the 10th issue of its monthly newsletter, Open Govist. The cover of the publication states, transparency is not always convenient, but it is necessary to build and maintain the trust of your constituents. The contents of the newsletter, from summarizing advisory opinions issued by OOG and the OMA and DC FOIA to new legislation in the district concerning transparency and open government, demonstrates the appropriateness of the statement. Washington, D.C. Digital Government Summit 2025. On August 21st, I, along with Kevin Brown, Bega's Information Technology Specialist, attended Washington, D.C. Digital Government Summit. The main themes included cybersecurity, digital transformation, AI implementation, data governance, and fostering collaboration across multiple stakeholders. Attendees benefited from expert discussions, insights into the future of government technology, and peer networking. Stephen N. Miller, the Chief Technology Officer of Octo, provided the opening remarks, and the keynote speaker, Scott Klosky, technologist, futurist, humanist, and author and consultant, presented dynamic modernization, solving the puzzle of people, process, and technology. And next is Microsoft 365 Copilot testing. Bega has been selected as an agency to perform a test of the Microsoft 365 Copilot artificial intelligence or AI tool. Several members of Bega staff will have the tool available for testing to help Octo roll out the tool for the full government's use. I, along with IT Specialist Brown, met with Microsoft representatives to discuss the plan to launch and the launch of the tools on August 26th and September 4th. On September 10th, I, along with IT Specialist Brown, Attorney Skirbo, OGE General Counsel Rashi Raj, and Supervisory OGE Attorney Agent Stuart Mitchell, met with the Microsoft team to discuss use cases for Copilot within our agency and to plan for training of the Bega staff testing participants. Next is covering.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yes.
I know we usually wait until the end,
Sure.
but I'm going to forget this
Okay.
unless I just mention it now. I just want to mention that at the ABA, American Bar Association conference in Toronto this year, AI was the biggest concern, especially how it affects lawyers and the way we share information, the way we catalog information. And there is a slew of issues with respect to open systems versus closed systems and what we share with respect to confidential information. And so I know you guys are doing it already and being extra careful, but I just wanted to point out that this is a huge concern right now. And the early adopters are the ones struggling with these issues. And so it looks like we're going to be one of the early adopters on this stuff.
Well, they brought us in for that reason, so we can look at those types of issues and advise Octo through our use of the tool, the pitfalls. And Kevin will be meeting with them next week to specifically discuss security issues and make sure that the information that the tool is accessing is contained within DC government and it's not going out on the internet and issues of that nature to make sure that we don't compromise any confidentiality issues.
Yep.
So
it's kind of an interesting thing because two sides of the office, the open government side and the ethics side, they don't really, there's not really attention most of the time. But in this case, there could be because of the confidential nature of everything these guys do versus the open government mission on this side. So just be careful. That's it.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm saying.
Noted. We shall be careful. And I'll note that the main thing that Octo is looking to use it for is FOIA to streamline and possibly create. That's the main use case. An AI tool that can kind of get through all those emails and specifically and streamline the FOIA officer's job and make things easier. So
great idea.
So we're hoping that works out.
Okay.
But we'll keep you informed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next is covering the federal takeover, gathering arrest data, knowing the law, and other tips for journalists covering DC. The National Press Club, Journalism Institute, and the DC Open Government Coalition held a briefing on September 5th to train journalists on best practices for gathering arrest data, learning the DC Code provisions that address access to arrest records, and gaining insight on the law enforcement agencies that currently are active in the district. The briefing was moderated by Elliot C. Williams, National Press Club Journalism Institute Training Manager, and Bob Becker and Fritz Mulhauser of the DC Open Government Coalition were the speakers. Attorney Skirbo and I attended the virtual meeting briefing. Open Meetings Act training to the District of Columbia Zoning Commission and the Office of Zoning staff members. On September 8th, Attorney Advisor Brandon Lewis and Chief Counsel Neal presented OMA training to the DC Zoning Commission and staff members of the Office of Zoning. Council on Government Ethics Law, COGL webinar, The Efforts to Dismantle Watergate Reforms and Potential Impacts. On September 10th, I attended this COGL webinar where the panelists discussed the impact of the removal of federal government officials at the Office of Government Ethics, Office of Special Counsel, and offices of multiple independent inspectors general and the agency ethics officials. The panel discussion was moderated by Trevor Potter, president of the Campaign Legal Center, and the panelists were Rob Stern, Commissioner, Los Angeles Ethics Commission, Rob Storch, a professor, Georgetown Law School, and Ellen Weintraub, senior fellow in Citizens United. The last training is Introduction to the Open Meetings Act for Boards of Trustees of Public Charter Schools. On September 10th, Attorney Lelma facilitated a webinar for boards of trustees of public charter schools where she provided detailed instructions for complying with the OMA. OOG staff and I attended the training. Next is the litigation and legislative update. First is litigation. The first case is Chicago Justice Project versus the district, case number 2022 CA-001175-B in DC Superior Court. I previously reported on this case in which the Chicago Justice Project filed suit to compel the Metropolitan Police Department to release certain records concerning the gang tracking and analysis system in a dispute regarding an advance fee that MPD demanded for its FOIA review and a similar amount that CJP demanded in attorney's fees. On July 11th, plaintiffs filed a motion for in-camera review. In this motion, plaintiff asked the court for an order requiring the district to furnish copies of a representative subset of 37 records currently withheld pursuant to DC Official Code -2-534 A3A, investigatory records compiled for law enforcement purposes, to the court for an in-camera inspection to determine whether the asserted exemption has been lawfully applied and whether severable, non-exempt information must be disclosed. On August 8th, the district filed an opposition to plaintiff's motion for in-camera review and a cross motion for enforcement of the settlement agreement. The plaintiff filed a reply brief in support of the plaintiff's motion on August 22nd. A copy of the district's opposition and cross motion and the plaintiff's reply brief have been added to Dropbox. An oral motions hearing is scheduled for September 25th, and OOG staff will continue to monitor this case. Gooch versus the District of Columbia, case number 2023-CAP-002404 in DC Superior Court. I have previously reported on this case in which a requester plaintiff sued the district for records related to his conviction. The district provided the plaintiff with partly redacted records in response to his request. The parties previously agreed to work on redactions in the Vaughn Index and provide updates at each status hearing. A status hearing was held on March 28th, and afterwards the court issued an order directing the plaintiff to file a motion describing the request made for the information received that is still redacted, and the plaintiff's basis for why remaining redactions are insufficient as a matter of law by May 12th. On May 12th, the plaintiff filed a motion challenging the sufficiency of the defendant's most recent FOIA production. The parties filed various motions in June through August, and the court held a hearing on the motion on September 2nd. The court granted the defendant District of Columbia's oral motion to dismiss and deny the plaintiff's written motion to compel. The court determined that the district's efforts were reasonable. The dismissal was noted on the docket along with minutes from the hearing, and the case is now closed. Copies of the defendant motion and reply have been added to Dropbox. And next is legislative action regarding the Open Meetings Act. As I previously reported, Chairman Mendelson introduced Bill 26-200, the Open Meetings Clarification Temporary Amendment Act of 2025, which was enacted on June 26 without the mayor's signature as Act 26-0086. It became effective August 16th and expires on August 29th, 2026. No additional legislative action has been taken on Senator Mike Lee's bill in the Senate 1450, which was introduced in April and referred to the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. A copy of the Act and U.S. Senate bill were added to Dropbox for the penultimate board's meeting. Legislative action regarding the boards of trustees for DC Public Charter School. I have previously reported on Bill 26-0062, the Board of Trustees Training Amendment Act of 2025, introduced by Councilmember Christina Henderson on January 27th. The bill will require members of boards of trustees of a public charter school to complete training programs on best practices for school board governance, which includes training on the Open Meetings Act. It had its second and final reading on July 1st and passed unanimously. On July 10th, the bill was transmitted to the mayor, signed by the mayor on July 21st, and enacted with Act number 26-0012. On July 25th, it was published in the DC Register. On July 29th, it was transmitted to Congress. The projected law date has changed from October 15th to September 17th. A copy of the act was added to Dropbox before the last board meeting. Legislative action concerning a government agency's interpretation of its administering statutes and regulations. For the last 3 months, I have reported on this bill 26-0048, which was introduced by Chairman Mendelson on January 13th. On June 24th, the Committee of the Whole filed its committee report, and on July 1st, Chairman Mendelson introduced an amendment by nature of a substitute concerning the bill. It passed unanimously on final reading. As I previously informed the board, the bill codifies agency deference and clarifies that a reviewing court or tribunal shall defer to an agency's reasonable interpretation of a statute or regulation that the agency administers, providing that the interpretation is not plainly wrong or inconsistent with the statutory or regulatory language of the council's intent. The bill was largely in response to the Supreme Court's decision in Looper Bright Enterprises v. Raimondo, 603 U.S. 363, 2024. It was enacted with Act number A26-0111, published in the D.C. Register on July 26 and transmitted to Congress on July 29th. The projected law date has been changed from October 15th to September 7th. A copy of the act was added to Dropbox before the last board's meeting. Legislative action regarding the Freedom of Information Act. I have previously reported on Bill 26-0340. On July 28th, Chairman Mendelson introduced the Fiscal Year 2026 Budget Support Amendment Act of 2025, Bill 26-0340, which included the Freedom of Information Clarification Amendment Act of 2025. This bill amends DC FOIA to create a new exemption for particular data the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and the District of Columbia Sentencing Commission receives from a court, federal agency, or federally established agency. This bill passed by voice vote 10-2 on July 28th. The mayor's response was due September 3rd, and the council expects to retain the measure on September 17th. A copy of the bill was added to Dropbox before the last board meeting. Next is administrative, and I do not have any administrative matters to report. This concludes the Office of Open Government September 11th, 2025 report. I'm happy to answer any additional questions the board may have.
Thank you, Director Allen. Are there any additional questions, comments? Thank you. The next on our agenda is a report from the Director of the Office of Government Ethics, Ashley Cooks. Director Cooks, please proceed.
Good morning, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board.
I'm Ashley Cooks, Director of Government Ethics. I'm pleased to report this, I'm pleased to present this information on behalf of the Office of Government Ethics, OGE. First is an update on the status of OGE investigations. The information reported today regarding OGE's cases will not reflect any status changes that may occur because of actions taken by the board during today's meeting. For open investigations by status, we have 55 matters that are open, 1 matter pending show cause hearing for a grand total of 56. For open undocketed matters, we have a grand total of 15. Pending state investigations by status, we have 35 matters that are closed pending collection, 3 matters stayed pending DC Superior Court case, 3 matters stayed for OIG investigation, 2 matters stayed for U.S. District Court case for a grand total of 43. For regulatory matters by status, we have 49 matters that are closed pending collection, 849 matters that are open for a grand total of 898 matters. Again, we currently have 56 open investigations and 8 matters that are stayed. The number of open preliminary and formal investigations includes 18 new matters. The investigative team resolved 6 investigations since the board last met. This total does not reflect the number of complaints that were dismissed for a lack of jurisdiction. The quarterly complaint report for quarter 3 of fiscal year 2025, covering the period of April 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2025, was published on Monday to the Bega website with a press release and a heat map. During quarter 3, OGE closed 57 matters. 39 of the closed matters were within Bega's jurisdiction. Of those matters, cases involving the rules governing outside employment or activities accounted for 9 matters, 23%, while allegations of misuse of government property, resources, vehicles, and preferential treatment or the lack of impartiality accounted for 7 matters, 18%. Potential violations of the conflict of interest rules accounted for 6 matters, 15%. Misuse of public office or private gain was alleged in 3 matters, 8%. Violations of the post-employment restrictions were involved in 2 matters for 5%. There was 1 matter, each 3% in the remaining categories. 18 of the 57 matters, nearly 1/3 of the matters closed during this quarter, involved allegations that were outside of Bega's jurisdiction. Copies of each were placed in the Dropbox. Next is an update on training and outreach. First, professional development trainings attended by staff. Auditor Courtney Walker attended Chess, Not Checkers, Part 2. Human Resources Specialist Megan Stoudemire took PeopleSoft Develop Entering Questions. Investigator Ileana Corrales took the Internet Investigations and Intelligence. Program Coordinator Stan Kosick took 2 courses. First, Getting Started with Python, Introduction and Complex Data Types in Python, and Working with Lists and Tuplets in Python. General Counsel Rashi Raj took the Mayor's Office of Legal Counsel's Hearing Officer Training. Approximately 94% of OGE's staff has completed DC government's annual cybersecurity awareness training. For trainings conducted by staff, since the last board meeting, OGE conducted 4 training sessions, the August monthly ethics training, 2 new employee orientation segments, and the August monthly brown bag session. On August 25th, Supervisory Investigator Ron Cook presented the August Ethics Counselor Brown Bag session titled Investigations Overview. 28 ethics counselors attended the session, and a copy of the presentation was placed in Dropbox. During the month of August, 1,600 employees completed ethics training using PeopleSoft. In August, 21 new users were added to the LMS. The training team has been meeting with LRN to discuss creating new courses and updating existing courses to make them more accessible to users. Last week, we released a new outside employment training. We are also preparing to launch a lobbyist training course in the learning management system. For outreach, OGE is in the final stages of coordinating Ethics Week 2025. This year's conference will take place on October 14th through the 17th, 2025, and will include 2 in-person days at the Bega office and 2 virtual days. This year's theme is Keeping Government Transparent and Ethical, and includes sessions that are designed to encourage employees to comply with ethics, open meeting, and FOIA laws. I'm sure that this year's program will garner the same success as previous years. On August 15th, OGE issued its bi-monthly newsletter, Ethically Speaking. A copy was placed in Dropbox. For an update on advisory opinions and advice, for informal advice, OGE's legal staff provided advice for approximately 35 ethics inquiries, which is 12 more than the 23 reported at the August board meeting. This number does not include responses we have provided to questions regarding the lobbyists and FDS e-filing systems. For formal advisory opinions, OGE has 2 formal advisory opinions in the works, one on widely attended gatherings, and an edited advisory neighborhood commissioner sign-on letter opinion. Next is an update on legislation and rulemaking. We only have one update there, that is lobbyist registration and reporting. OGE is in the process of issuing a notice of proposed rulemaking for the lobbyist section of Bega's regulations. This proposed amendment to Title III of DCMR clarifies the date with which activity reports is due from the 10th to the 15th of January, April, July, and October. This notice will be published in the DC Register for a 30-day comment period. For OGE administrative matters, the only update there is OGE is in the process of filling its vacancies for the program support assistant and the legal assistant. Next is an update on financial disclosure statement, FDS. Pursuant to DC Official Code Sections 1-1162.24 and 1-1162.25, public officials and certain government employees must file a financial disclosure statement as a means of transparency and to prevent engaging in conduct that violates the Financial Conflict of Interest statute. Bega is responsible for ensuring that employees and public officials who meet the statutory requirement file their annual financial disclosure statement. The 2025 financial disclosure season has closed, and the FDS filing deadline was May 15th. OGE opened the season with 10,147 names in the e-filing system. Nearly all agencies have submitted their FDRRs with addendums. Enforcement is now underway. Financial disclosure enforcement letters were sent to 698 designated filers who failed to file and nearly 50 who filed late. Financial disclosure fines are due by October 2nd, according to the fine letter. Next is an update on lobbyist registration and reporting, LRR. Pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.27A, a person who receives compensation or expends funds in an amount of $250 or more in any 3 consecutive calendar month period for lobbying shall register with the Director of Government Ethics and pay the required registration fee. According to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.30, each registrant shall file a quarterly report concerning the registrant's lobbying activity during the previous quarter. The second quarter reporting deadline was June 15th, and notices were sent on June 16th and June 30th. In response to the deadline, 459 activity reports were filed using the e-filing system. Additionally, staff responded to 36 support tickets as well as several phone inquiries. Enforcement for the first quarter is underway, and fine letters were sent on July 31st. The second quarter report was generated and is being reviewed. Last is an update on public investigations. 24-0016F and 25-002F Henry Trayon White. These are formal investigations based on 1, the criminal indictment of Ward 8 council member for allegedly agreeing to receive and accept bribes, and number 2, allegations that he violated the code of conduct by failing to file a full and complete financial disclosure statement. Last month, the board issued a notice of hearing, and 25-0002F for a hearing on February 5th, 2026. Thank you. This concludes the Office of Government Ethics September report. I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Director Cooks. Are there any questions for Director Cooks?
Madam Chair, I just have one small question. I know that when you were talking about training, a lot of training classes have catchy names. You mentioned something about chess and checkers. What
Yes.
was that all about?
That was
Just in
a
case someone's
training.
listening out there and just wondering or what we're spending money on.
Yeah, so that was a training that our auditor, Courtney Walker, attended. What's it by DCHR? It was offered by the Department of Human Resources. So
Okay.
it's a professional development training that was open to all DC government employees that dealt with certain professional development trainings, skills, basically.
Okay, thank you.
So it was free. We didn't spend any money
Oh,
on
free, that helps.
it.
That helps.
Director, where do we stand with the budget? I see that we are actually hiring those two positions now, so the hiring freeze is off.
The hiring freeze is on until October 1. So we can post any vacant positions that we have, but the actual person cannot start until October 1st. So the freeze is until the end of this fiscal year, which is September 30th.
And it resolved because they allowed the district, I haven't been keeping up with this in the press, but they allowed the district to spend money that had previously been earmarked for this year? Or it's
It
a new year?
resolved because it's a new fiscal year,
Okay,
starting October 1st.
good.
Any other questions? Okay. And the next item on the agenda is public comments. Members of the public in attendance at this meeting have the opportunity to make a comment at this time. Are there any members of the public wishing to make a comment? Since there are no comments from the public, we will proceed with the next item on the agenda. And this is our our closed session. This is a closed session to discuss ongoing confidential investigations pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B14, to consult with an attorney to obtain legal advice and to preserve the attorney-client privilege between an attorney and a public body pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B4A, to discuss personnel matters, including the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, performance evaluation, compensation, discipline, demotion, removal, or resignation of government appointees, employees, or officials pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B10, to deliberate on a decision in which the Ethics Board will exercise quasi-judicial functions pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B13, and to discuss contract negotiation strategies pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B2. May I have a motion to enter into executive session?
I'll offer the motion that we enter into executive session.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board enter into executive session. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Board members, please move over to the boardroom for the executive session. We will return to this meeting after the conclusion of the executive session to report out any matters decided, finish any other business, and adjourn this meeting. Thank you. And we are back on the record. The board, in its executive session, approved a notice of violation in matter 24-0077-P in Ray Mary Ann Stinson. The board also approved in matter 24-0007-F in Ray Mark Davis. The board approved a notice of hearing and scheduling order. Time is now 11:55, and this concludes the meeting of the DC Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. Our next meeting will be held here at the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, 1030 15th Street Northwest, Suite 700 West, and virtually on October 2nd, 2025 at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good.
Thank you, Madam Chair.